So for the last week, I've been experimenting with various cell balancing methods for lithium iron phosphate battery systems. And if you have a higher voltage battery bank like a 16S cell configuration, you want all of the cells to charge and discharge together so that you have full capacity, so that you have longevity based off of quite a few studies. You want all the cells balanced over time, and then also to have increased performance because the resistance changes at different states of charges, so you want them to cycle together. So it's very important to balance your cells, but a lot of methods that people employ are ineffective. So the first one that I want to talk about is putting all of your cells in parallel and just leaving them. This does work, but it takes weeks, if not months at a time. And initially, you'll have a lot of current passing from one cell to the next cell next to it, and you can use a clamp meter and watch it drop slowly down and down. But the charge and discharge curve for lithium iron phosphate is relatively flat. So once these cells get to around the same voltage, they stop passing as much current. So it can take weeks if you're going to use this method. Now the next method is using an active cell balancer. And what they're supposed to do is pass power from one cell to the cell next to it so that it's very efficiently balancing the cells down to 0.001 volts. The problem with these balancers is that I did tests all week long with this battery capacity monitor, and what I did is I made my own battery with two 100 amp hour cells and two 60 amp hour cells, and then I did a capacity test at a very low rate. And so with that configuration, these are supposed to help a whole bunch, right? But I only got 1, maybe 2 amp hours more of capacity with these. And that's with mismatched cells. You will never find a used or mismatched cell that's off by 40 amp hours. That's crazy. So these, in my opinion, are completely worthless. And before I did these tests, I did an initial test to make sure that my equipment was accurate. And the first test that I did with mismatched cells, but they were all charged to relatively like the same state of charge, I got 62.38 amp hours. I used this balancer and I got 63.3 amp hours. So like practically no improvement. That could have been just the temperature of the cells or something else. Also, the max current that I saw going from one cell to another cell was 1.74 amps, which is not that great. The next one I tested is this one, and it's probably the cheapest one, and I actually got 64 amp hours, and I also got a corresponding higher increase of current going from one cell to another, which was 3.3 amps. But this one says 5 to 8 amps. I could never hit that. And I tested the current at a very high state of charge, when one's at like 3.8 volts. So I'm, trying to give it the advantage, and that's all I could pull from it. And the next one I tested is this one, and I actually pulled 65.4 amp hours, which is impressive compared to the last ones, but I'm pretty sure that this one just balanced out the cells and we squeezed out that last little amp hour. And the reason I did these tests back to back is because the cells were mismatched. And at that low of a C rate with a true active cell balancer, it should increase the capacity. If we were doing a 1C rate, all of these test results would be the same. It wouldn't show me anything, but I was doing it very slowly so that these could catch up and try to increase the capacity. And as you'll notice that every time I do a cycle with these balancers, I was getting an increased capacity. So I don't think any of these were much better than each other. They were just finely tuning the balance. So all you need is a very good initial balance, and you don't need any of these active balancers. These don't matter at all. And the reason that I know this is I did a final test without any balancers, and I got 63.96 amp hours. So it's slightly higher than the initial one without any balancers, but it wouldn't make a difference. You might have an increased 1 amp hour, but that's in an extreme circumstance at a very low rate, and no one's doing that. No one is doing that at all. But it is true if your cells are out of balance and this balances them, you will have increased capacity. And this might, for your system, help for the first day, like a lot. But after that, after the cells are balanced, these are worthless. So I want to teach you guys how to balance your cells properly so that you never have to balance them again. So first, you want to put all of your cells in parallel, but as we mentioned earlier, this will not pass much current between them because the charge and discharge curve is relatively flat. So what we need to do is put these cells in an extreme state of charge, in either a high or a low state of charge, and because most BMSs nowadays with passive dissipative systems, they are triggered at a high state of charge. So what we want to do is top balance these cells. There were lots of instances before where you want to bottom balance, but not for what we're doing nowadays with most of the BMSs that we're using for solar. So you want to charge these cells up, but what's the fastest way to do that? Typically with 12-volt chargers are so cheap nowadays, I put these in groups of 4 and I charge them up all the way, or to like 95% state of charge. And then I break them all apart, and then I put them back together in parallel, and then for that last 5%, I use a desktop power supply and I put it at 3.65 volts, and then I wait until the amperage drops to 0. Once that happens, all of these cells are perfectly balanced and you will have the best capacity readings you will ever have with these, if you use a high quality BMS and good wire and proper size bus bars and everything else. But even with mismatched or used or new cells, this method will work best. And you can actually wait for your BMS to balance your pack over time. It might take 1 or 2 months of cycling every day, but most BMS systems will balance it anyway. So for me personally, I don't even care. I was just doing this experiment, so I actually have data. And this has been talked about on our forum by one of our members called Ghostwriter, and he works in the lithium iron phosphate battery industry, and he was talking about what manufacturers do, and they'll actually do it in steps. They'll put all of the cells in parallel and go to like 3.4 volts, wait till the current drops to 0, 3.5 volts, wait till it drops to 0, and then 3.6. For this size battery bank and what we're doing, you can crank it to 3.6 and it's fine. It will do constant voltage and current all the way to the top, and then once it drops to 0 over here, you are done. I'm still actually balancing this pack right now. This is going to be a really awesome battery. I can't wait. But that's in videos to come. But yeah, you guys do not need to buy all these fancy balancers or whatever. These actually could help if you're doing high C-rate loads. So if you're pushing like the thermal limits of your batteries and you're like actually testing for internal resistance and making sure that every single one of them is matched properly for pushing large loads, then this is actually kind of useful. It could help, but I don't think it could help that much. I know a lot of people use these in the audio industry for pushing like 10C rates on big packs, but passing like 5 or even 8 amps from one cell to another in those circumstances of pushing like hundreds of amps, I don't think these are helping that much. I mean, call me crazy. I mean, you might avoid a low voltage disconnect for a couple seconds, but yeah, I would like to see somebody prove me wrong on that. Please post a video or show me some data, but I'm not buying that. Anyways, I don't think these are smart for anybody now. I thought it would be smart for mismatched cells or used cell systems, but after these capacity test results, I'm not impressed at all. Getting an extra 1 amp hour at like a 0.2 or 0.1 C rate is just silly. I really try to give them the advantage with this little setup, and I was like lowering the current sometimes at the very end to try to milk it. Try to milk it for some more capacity, and I couldn't. So yeah, these are just a waste of your time and money. And if you do it properly, parallel connect and charge them up, you will be set for years. You won't have to touch it. You won't have to think about it. And honestly, this experiment wore me out. I was working on this day and night for over a week. So I'm pretty tired, and I have other projects that I'm finally working on this week. And I'm so happy to finally just get done with this project and never talk about it again because it's completely worthless. But I just kept seeing posts of people and so much misinformation. So I hope you guys found this video useful, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.